You have also founded Ithasa Research and Digital to monitor and document new technology trends. You are an integral part of the past, the present, and the future of Indian technology sector, and we look forward to an exciting session with you. Thank you once again so much for joining us, and a very warm welcome to you. Ladies and gentlemen, this book is a total recall of how policy, academics, and industry combine to turn a technology-starved India into a technology-centric India. As late as the mid-80s, many of India's computerized companies were still using punch card computers. A few companies had room-sized mainframe computers and desktop mini-computers. I remember my first job at CDOT, where we looked absolutely in awe at the room-sized computer, which to us did unimaginable things. I remember that the mini computers required 8-inch floppies to be inserted to load software and then save the data. Offices had to be specially cooled and dust-free enclosures for computers. For smaller companies, there was timeshare data processing centers, which had to be rented by hours. We have certainly come a long way since then, since those days. Today, we all carry computing devices in our pockets that are many times more capable than those machines. The government played a key role in the introduction and progress of IT in India. It was a stop-start journey in the beginning, but with a generational change in India's leadership in the 1980s, technology became the mantra for India's economic nirvana. Though the political resistance to computerization remained strong, the will of particular leaders and technocrats prevailed and paved the way for today's digital India. Those of us who were around then would remember the proliferation of PC assemblers and software pirates. Computer coaching centers flourished in every neighborhood, and IT companies flooded job ad pages of newspapers. The end of Cold War and liberalization freed India's computing pioneers to tap American IT service market, and body shopping became a byword for software work. Then came the Y2K panic, and as the cliche goes, the rest is history. This book is as authentic a story of India's IT revolution as one can get, and I recommend it to all those who want to know how IT industry has changed India and how it is shaping the country's future. In this session, we have an opportunity to learn how India's IT revolution came about and where is it headed now. With these words, it is now my pleasure to invite the AIMA President, Mr. Shrinivas Dempo, to take over and conduct the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. And let me add my own welcome to Rekha's. A very warm welcome to everyone for this 61st Leader Speak session. And we are very, very privileged to have Mr. Kris Gopalakrishnan, who is a co-founder of Infosys and chairman Axilor Ventures, to do this honor for us. Kris, a very, very warm welcome to you. And it's been an absolute pleasure. I met you last during the Vietnam trip. We were on the same flight, and it was an absolute delight to talk to you on so many subjects. And today we are doing this online session. I hope we can do a physical session with you, in the very near future. You've come out, as Rekha says, with a book focusing on the journey of Indian IT over the years. Rekha, I paid heed to your advice. I've already bought the book, but the time was too short to read everything, but I have managed to scan through it. And I must congratulate Kris for putting together a compelling narrative of Indian IT. It's written in such simple language, crisp. I've just finished a few chapters, but I promise to do it and complete it in a very short possible time. And today, Kris, our generation, and particularly my daughter's generation, takes digital technologies for granted. But I think what they can learn from your book is a need to appreciate the journey of curiosity, compulsion, and venture to go from zero to where we are today. Your book provides a rapid tour of the past 60 years of India's IT, its genesis, its sporadic evolution for 3 decades, and its torrential evolution since the 90s that we've all been able to witness. It's a fascinating read for anyone interested in finding out how Indian IT has moved, as Rekha said earlier, from room-sized computers to computers in everybody's pockets, which is the mobile phone today. One outstanding feature of your book is its linearity and objectivity. It charts India's IT journey from the early years of independent India, milestone by milestone, and resists pandering to the present. My compliments to you, Kris, also for taking a wide-angle view and bringing out the stories and the perspectives of a large number of past and present leaders of the IT industries, whose leadership we have always admired and respected. It is a feel-good narrative with lots of amazing and revealing anecdotes, and it should inspire today's generation to imbibe a pioneering spirit. Kris, you are both an actor and observer in this fascinating narrative. And in this session, we look forward to getting to know more about your experience as well as India's IT past, present, and future. Ladies and gentlemen, contemporary India owes a lot of its global prestige and self-esteem to the IT industry. Most importantly, IT exports have liberated India from a tyranny of foreign exchange shortages that we remember not many years back, which dictated India's economic and foreign policies since its independence. India's IT exports in 2021 exceeded $150 billion, whereas in 1990, the year when India almost defaulted on its foreign exchange payments, India's IT exports were only about 100 million. See the growth and the size of it all. The story of India's IT sector is the story of India's transformation in modern times, and it's a case study for modeling future policies and practices in both government and private businesses. Today, IT is at the core of Indian society, culture, governance, economy, whatever you may call. In fact, there is no civil or commercial existence without IT that I can think of today. Every industry is acquiring the tech suffix, and digital intermediation is deciding the control of resources, process, and consumption. The money itself is going to be digital currencies in the future, and the 5G is set to automate and virtualize life and economy. Tech is now the omniscient and omnipresent force that has the power to create, preserve, or destroy. Where India ends up in the years to come will depend on how the Indians of today develop and apply technology to life, society, polity, and economy. Today, we have an opportunity to hear from Mr. Kris Gopalakrishnan about India's IT progress and its impact on India's potential in the future and the present. It's now my pleasure to invite Kris to talk about his book and give us his views on IT's future in India. Thank you, and the floor is yours, Kris.
Thank you, Shrinivas. Thank you, Rekha. Thank you, AIMA, for inviting me to share my views on the industry, share our thoughts on the book that we wrote, and then, of course, have an interactive session. As both Shrinivas and Rekha said, this industry today is a global industry. It's a globally respected industry. It's an industry that has created about 5 million jobs, has transformed the way we develop technology today, we use IT today. If I may say, if you look at the COVID times, we all started working from home, remote work. The seeds of this were planted way back in the late 70s, early 80s, when the Indian IT services industry pioneered the remote work. So in some sense, right, there's a connect between what is happening today to the early days of the IT services industry. There is no need to guess. I'm very proud of what we have been able to achieve. I strongly feel that there are lessons for the startups today. There are lessons for other industries which are, I believe, developing to become world-class in India. I don't see any reason why we cannot create multiple world-class companies and world-class industries out of India. India needs that. As we transform from a $3 trillion economy to a $10 trillion economy, we will have many multinational corporations out of India to lead the world in this 21st century. So our aim was to talk to all the leaders, and I'm very fortunate. I'm very thankful to all the leaders who worked with us, who gave their time, sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours to actually capture their story, their view. So many of the anecdotes that we have today, we may not have been present, but you are hearing the story from somebody who was actually physically present there. Rekha talked about a couple of stories about the 8-inch floppy and things like that. But there are many stories here of how IIT Kanpur got a mainframe system and how it was transported from the airport to the campus on a bullock cart, because they were afraid that if they took it on a truck, that the vibrations on the road would actually, probably create problems for the computer. So there are many such stories, and these are from first-hand account of people who were present. And the reason for doing this is one, it takes a large number of people to build an industry. You need to build an industry as you build your company, because the scale that is required, the support that you require from the government has to be for an industry. Government very rarely comes forward to support a single company. But as an industry, if we talk about creating something world-class, I am confident that the government will come forward to support this. And so all of us together, even though we were fierce competitors, worked together to create a world-class industry. Second, it requires to think about the various stages of development of an industry. Initially, it's struggling to survive, early days, and many of the startups here would actually, startup founders would actually, understand the journey as I talk about, appreciate the journey as I talk about. So it's, struggle in the beginning, then you get the confidence to build a foundation. You are then at the right place at the right time to scale up as opportunity arises. And after scale up, you need to consolidate and you need to expand the footprint of the industry. You need to make sure that as the growth slows down, you focus on profitability, you focus on sustainability, you focus on continuing to being world-class, continuing to be competitive, continuing to innovate such that the leadership is maintained. These are the various stages, and we talk about that. Myself and my co-authors, Krishnan and Deyasindhu, talk about this in the book throughout. Now, there are very interesting facts which I thought I should just briefly mention. India started the hardware journey also very early on. We had even developed a mainframe computer early on at TIFR. It's called the TripTrack system. But somewhere we did not convert that into an industry. We did not look at manufacturing those computers in India. We started focusing on the software side, maybe because the capital required and the market was not large enough at that point. Similarly, I talked about building the foundation, right? So as an industry, we recruited engineers from any discipline of engineering and trained them to become software professionals. Today, many other industries train the employees they recruit. So, the software industry created the employees that it required to grow the industry, to make it, to scale this industry up. Similarly, we also talk about one of the major challenges faced by the industry, the Satyam episode in the book. And here again, I feel that we did all the right things. First of all, the government replaced the board with a small number of people of very high repute to run the company. The entire industry agreed not to poach the customers or employees from Satyam. The customers of Satyam did not lose anything. They continued to work with Satyam. They continued to get service from Satyam, and ultimately, right? Satyam got acquired by Tech Mahindra, and this is a fantastic example of when something goes wrong, how the industry, government, etc., work together to to correct the situation such that the employees, the customers, the society does not get hurt in that. One last example I will talk about is the creation of the software technology park and the policy around that. Now, today we talk about single window clearance. Now, this is the best example of single window clearance that I can think of, because one entity, the software technology parks, it's a government entity as part of those days Department of Electronics, today part of MeitY, which was giving us all the approvals required. So, for example, building permits, approval of plans, approval of import of equipment, software, etc., approval of or certification of exports, because we would get export tax credits. Everything was done by one entity, and this was a distributed entity. So, if Infosys Bangalore required any approval, we would approach STP in Bangalore, and they typically run by professionals who understood technology, and they would immediately give us the required approval and things like that. So this is the best example of a single window clearance that I can think of. And of course, this is by the central government. So there are lots and lots of lessons, lots and lots of examples, anecdotes, etc., stories in this. And the idea is, we, by documenting this through the accounts of all the actors, all the leaders who are there, who firsthand got a view of this, who actually made this industry happen. We wanted to document that such that the startups of today, other industries can learn from these episodes, these stories. And I hope that we will have, not hope, I am confident to say that we will build several world-class companies and several world-class industries in India. And India, as it transforms to become a $10 trillion economy, will look very, very different. I'm proud of what the IT services industry has become today. And I'm sure that every Indian will be proud of the company they work for, the business they have started, and the country that we live in. With that, I will pause and let's have an interactive session.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Kris. I think, you ended in a very, very positive tone, saying that, you are very, very hopeful and positive about India growing in a much larger scale in many of the industries and also with the IT industry. And you also gave, my first question would be related to, the kind of ease of doing business that apparently we all have an impression that the IT industry sort of experienced even during the earlier times. And I just wanted to go into a little bit of depth as to why you think the reason is. Because I come from very traditional businesses, we come from the brick and mortar businesses of actual manufacturing, commodities, where we have seen different stages where we went into earlier the licensing system, then post 99, it got liberalized, but yet there were a lot of issues in terms of bureaucratic hurdles and so on. But the impression we always got was IT industry from day one was different. Just wanted your thoughts on how the IT industry has evolved over the years and why did it enjoy this sort of, I wouldn't call the word privilege, but why did they experience such sort? Because I've heard, even you've run Infosys as a co-founder, I've heard Mr. Narayan Murthy's statements that, IT industry always believed in transparency and it always believed in, a lot of, arguing with the government or, getting things sorted out in the right way. Just wanted your thoughts on these.
So first of all, Department of Electronics in those days were run by people like Professor Sheshagiri, N. Vittal. We were fortunate to have visionary secretaries, people who are first and foremost professionals and who trusted, I believe, the industry. In fact, Mr. Vittal would always talk about he's setting the target for the industry. Now, we asked him for some support, some policy changes, and he said, I will do that provided the industry grows to 300 million by 1994 or something like that, right? And the industry exceeded that. And then he said, let's now target $1 billion and things like that. So one is having professionals who trusted and believed in the industry. Second, the transparency that you talked about. First generation entrepreneurs, if you look at, TCS, though it's part of Tata's, it was run as an independent entity with people like FC Kohli, Ramadurai, Wipro with Asim Premji, HCL with Shiv Nadar, and so on, right? These are people who are professionals first and foremost, and believed in creating well-run companies. And we also spoke it with single voice through setting up of NASSCOM and through NASSCOM. And even today, whenever government sets policies up for the IT services industry or the IT industry, NASSCOM is taken into confidence in setting the policy. If we have a challenge, for example, let's say visas to US, etc., together, industry and government together try to handle these issues. I can only speculate at this point, but these are some of the reasons, I believe. And the Satyam episode also demonstrates, the trust was reciprocated or was not misused. Yeah. When there was a challenge, we all together made sure that nobody got hurt, and things were corrected as quickly as possible. Some of the best run companies in the world in terms of corporate governance, etc., are Indian IT services companies. So if you look at how you can build trust, how you can create world-class governance systems, how you can work with some of the best professional bureaucrats, etc. I believe it is possible. I think that's all. It's some sense speculation at this point.
Thank you. Thanks, Kris. Coming to your book, I believe that the IT sector is the most documented part of Indian economy in some sense. What was the thought behind doing a book on India's IT history at this point in time?
So as soon as I stepped down from Infosys, in 2014, October 2014, I wanted to show my thanks and appreciation for what the industry has given me. What all I have is because of the industry, because of Infosys. And I then, mooted this idea of interviewing all the actors and documenting before it's too late, right? Unfortunately, Mr. F.C. Kohli is no more with us, but we were fortunate that we have a full recording of his thoughts and at high definition, right? So we wanted to capture the stories, the anecdotes, their view of how the industry has developed. And as I said, we are very thankful for all these leaders. 56 people have spent, anywhere between 2 to 4 hours doing these interviews. And we released this as an app and also on the web, these interviews, and these are available at the Itihasa website. Then some people told us that, you need to document this as a book so that, the narrative becomes continuous and narrative reaches more number of people. So in the last 2 years, we wrote this book, myself and my co-authors, and you will see that it is very well researched, with a lot of references, some pictures that people have shared with us, and that's the reason for this book. See, we need to look at history to understand why we are here, how we have arrived here, who are the people involved, what were their mental models and thoughts in building this industry, how to build an industry along with government. We felt that it's a story worth telling, and that's why this book is there.
Great. I think it's a great thought, and congratulations to you for taking the initiative and doing this, particularly when this industry has impacted so many lives in the country, whether, as you mentioned, employment, revenues, foreign exchange, whatever you may call it. I think this industry has had a significant, and the stock market wealth building, that stock market wealth building, also the IT companies have contributed a lion's share. So congratulations once again. Kris, you mentioned about Itihasa Research and Digital. What were your objectives in founding Itihasa, if we may understand, and would love to hear your views on this.
So Itihasa started to document this, right? So this was published under Itihasa initially as interviews. Then we went on to use the Itihasa platform to do research on the new technologies that are emerging. So for example, brain sciences. So who are the actors, what kind of research is being done across our academic institutions? There is no comprehensive documentation of the type of research work going in our academic institutions. See, I feel that as India transitions to a developed economy, we need to invest in our own IP, creating our own knowledge, building world-class products out of India. This can only happen out of the research from our academic institutions. So we wanted to document the type of research that's happening in, let's say, artificial intelligence, brain sciences, biotechnology, things like that. And so Itihasa then went on to document research, worked with the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office, again to produce reports and things like that. So Itihasa's role today is to capture the type of research, the scale of research, the people involved in conducting research in India.
Thank you for sharing this. My next question would be, we always talk about leadership that is very important to either building an industry or, a nation. How critical do you think has been the personal intervention by the various prime ministers in the last 5 or 6 decades in India's IT progress over this period? What's your opinion?
We were fortunate to get support from the various governments at the center and governments at various states because of the quality of jobs that IT industry created. And these are some of the best paying jobs, right? We got support from all the state governments. Interestingly, when I meet people from government, during the conversation would move to my son or daughter is working for such and such a company, and they're working in let's say Detroit in the US or things like that. The industry allowed these professionals to stay in India, be a global citizen, be a global employee, and do world-class work. So, the support that we received because of the potential, not just potential, the actual job creation, I think was the reason why the industry is where it is today. And actively, you can look at which all cities have the industry developed, right? It's Bangalore because of the Karnataka government support, Hyderabad because of the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh government support, and now the Telangana government in Tamil Nadu. So it is very clearly concentrated around states where there's significant support, early support. Later on, of course, now there's support from many of the other states actually.
Sure. Thank you. If you see the US tech industry's foundations, they were in NASA and DARPA, and India also took the public sector route to technology development. But if you compare the success, ours was limited success, if I may say. Under the current conditions, Kris, what role should, according to you, the government play in taking India beyond technology adoption and fostering technological invention and innovation?
Government has a catalyzing role by setting the right policy framework for industry, creating a level playing field, providing incentives. I completely believe that government must create incentives for investments to happen. Industry is taking a risk by putting their money and building an industry, and there is nothing wrong in providing incentive. You need to make land available for creating these facilities, factories, etc. required at reasonable rates, because especially in the services industry, you want to create these companies or these industries closer to cities where land price typically are higher. So I see the need to provide land at reasonable rates, so that the whole idea is you support the creation of this industry, you de-risk the initial stages of building this industry, and help these industries to flourish. So I see an important role for government. And this, I believe, should be the model. And this is what happens today. If you look at space industry, space is now privatized. Certain aspects of space has been privatized. Defense industry has been privatized, and private participation is allowed now. So I think we have to work with the government. We have to make sure that there is an important role in nation building for private sector. Very important role for nation building in private sector. There's a very important role for creation of jobs for the private sector. A very important role for wealth creation from the private sector. Important role for creating IP, creating products and services, bringing innovations to market. So private sector has an important role to play in society, and this, along with the government, by creating the right policy framework, must work together to build this industry. And again, I look back at the IT services industry, and I now see this happening. So, for example, the transition to two-wheeler, the transition to alternate energy sources, sustainable energy sources. The government and industry work together to do this, and again, that's what gives me optimism today to say that we will become a developed economy over the next, let's say, 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you there, because if you see increasingly over the last few years, the government has been playing more of a supportive role, to create that environment, that infrastructure, so that private sector really thrives. And, that's where a good amount of emphasis is laid up on startup policies, on, creating new entrepreneurs. So I think, that's where the future of, wealth creation would lie, according to me.
No, Shrinivas, if I may interrupt you here and give you one more example, Bangalore opened its second terminal.
Yeah.
And many of our participants would have seen videos or pictures of that, right?
Yes.
I'm very proud of what
Sure.
the terminal is actually. And so I think, see, before I think we formally started this discussion, we talked about, the talent is there, the money is there. What is required is the ambition and the will. And it was there, but I think you need to create a collective vision with government and then execute on that. If that happens, I don't see any reason why we cannot create world-class companies out of India.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. The next question is, you mentioned Y2K panic in the US, which was a lucky break for many of the Indian IT companies. Could you recall, for the benefit of our audience, as for us, how Indian companies won the Y2K sweepstakes?
So let me also, confess to all of you that plays a very important role. Things have to fall in the right place, and you have to be in the right place to take advantage of, things coming your way. So I talked about building a strong foundation, right? So if I look at Infosys, we set up a recruitment engine, we set up a training infrastructure, we set up HR policies, we created an ESOP program, we listed on Indian exchange and NASDAQ, the US exchange. So we laid quality, we implemented quality system. So we were building a world-class company, and then Y2K happened. Y2K is a bug that needed fixing. Right? Normally, in those days, in the software, the date was coded as DD in the US, for example, DDYY. Only 2 positions were given for the year. So when we transitioned from 1999 to 2000, it will just show 00. And this would actually impact every algorithm written to sort data based on a date, right? Suddenly, the date would go back to 0. Or the year would go back to 0. And it will actually impact every algorithm which is based on ascending dates. So this needed fixing, but it's a bug fix. No features were added, so this had to be done at the lowest possible cost. It required large number of people because a lot of the work was manual to go in, inspect the code, change it, etc., etc. Indian companies stepped in to do the work out of India because the code, the programs could be sent to India. We will modify the programs, test it, ship it back to, or send it back to the US. And Indian companies were fully ready. We automated a lot of the tasks. We wrote tools to automate this task, let's say 70–80%, and provided the best quality service to our customers, global customers. These customers became long-term customers for the Indian IT industry. And this allowed us to grow more than 100% year on year for several years running. And when I look at Infosys, for example, we took about 23 years to hit the $1 billion revenue, 23 months to get the second $1 billion, and 13 months to get the third $1 billion, right? So 2004, we hit 1 billion, 2006, second billion, and 2007, the third billion. So you can see, how the industry growth accelerated on top of Y2K, as well as the internet boom that happened again simultaneously in the early 2000s. And so Indian companies were at the right place at the right time with the right solution, with the right talent, and we had built a solid foundation for the industry.
Thank you. Thanks. So if you see the 90s, and it's always very tempting to compare India and China in every sector. So I would try to do that in the IT sector too. If you see the 90s and early 2000s, Chinese always envied India's IT prowess and IT success. And India was also expected to dominate the internet economy. Instead, if you see China now, it rivals the US in digital technologies and internet applications. Where do you think the IT Indian sector really slipped up, if at all? And how can we overcome this? How can India's leading IT service companies be one of the leading digital innovators? Your thoughts, please.
See, in the services side, IT services side, if you take the top 10 companies, 5 are Indian. There are no Chinese companies in that list. So clearly in the IT services space, Indian companies dominate. It's because our close interlinking with the business practices in the developed economies. Of course, our knowledge of English and ability to communicate and understand customer requirements and things like that. Third, many of the multinational corporations had operations already in India, and our people were exposed to these companies. So where China did well is one, they created a walled ecosystem. They blocked internet companies from coming to China and offering their services, and they created their domestic industry. Whereas India practiced an open policy, we allowed global internet companies to come to India and provide their solutions. So China, took advantage of this and created their local companies, which then became very large because of the size of the population and size of the economy. Second, Chinese companies, of course, dominated in hardware and hardware manufacturing. And then, they also invested in R&D to look at AI, machine learning, some of these new technologies. And they invested billions of dollars by actually bringing professors from the US academic institutions to do their research in China, but transfer that knowledge to Chinese universities and Chinese students. Again, we did not go that path. So I strongly believe that these are two different models. See, if you look at the R&D organizations in India of multinational corporations, you will find that India is the second or the third largest location for R&D for many of the multinational corporations, Microsoft, Google. So it's not the lack of talent or intelligence or anything like that. It's really the policies that we followed, which are more open and more integrated with the global economy. I feel that this will be more enduring. This will, in the long term, create better companies in India, more successful companies in India, and India is on the way to become, a $10 trillion economy.
Very, very interesting perspective, Kris, on how you differentiate between the China and India model. I think I'll take a few questions from the audience. There was one question from Murli Ram. I think you partly answered it, but still, Indian software industry has indeed grown in terms of scale and revenue. We have also grown in work complexity, maturity from Y2K to work on new product development for Western world customers. However, the original product innovation has not grown as much. Is it the lack of mental, physical, financial, and policy incentives that is not encouraging original innovation as much in India?
So product requires a different business model. You invest upfront in R&D, you invest in sales and marketing, and you need a local market to test your products. So none of these were strengths for India. We didn't have the risk capital in India to invest in products. We did not have the local market yet. Today we have a larger market, so the strengths that we had were different, and that's why the product industry did not really take off. Having said that, you have companies like IBS in the logistics space. We have Zoho in the productivity applications. You have Freshdesk in the sales management process and things like that. So you have a growing number of product companies coming out of India, which are actually world-class. And in the banking sector, the top 3 products all have Indian ownership or Indian origin. The products from Infosys or TCS today run all the major banks in India and around the world. So it is just that the business model required different strengths. We didn't have the capital, we didn't have the local market, but now that we have risk capital, we have access to risk capital, we have a much larger local market, you will see more and more products emerging out of India. And many of our unicorns, if I may say so, have SaaS model, though they provide certain other services, but they are really technology companies, and they use SaaS as the model for delivering their services using technology.
Thank you. Also, I'm very happy to acknowledge the presence of 80 students from Vivekananda Institute of Management Studies, as they are all sitting in one classroom and listening to Kris. So very warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Next question, Kris, is from Sudhir Mittal. who says, what are your views on which industry would be the next marathon in the country to take India forward, the way software and technology companies did?
So I'm very optimistic about our automotive industry. It's a very large industry. Already in the two-wheeler space, we are the #1 producer of two-wheelers in the world. We are 4th or 5th in terms of four-wheelers. Only about 5% of Indians own four-wheelers. I'm confident that pretty soon we will have probably 20% of Indians owning four-wheelers. Of course, we need to figure out where they will drive it. We don't have roads in our cities, but we will see a fast-growing automotive industry, a very competitive automotive industry. We're transitioning much faster than many other geographies to electric, and we are also now experimenting with hydrogen as a fuel. So automotive, I'm very optimistic about. I strongly believe that in the healthcare, we have an opportunity to, again, leapfrog. See, not having a legacy, not having baggage from the past allows us to leapfrog and reimagine and rethink how we can build an industry. So healthcare, I'm very optimistic. What we did during COVID is an amazing story. We vaccinated about 1 billion people with our vaccine. We tracked every one of those using the COVID app. You could get a vaccination certificate the minute you completed your vaccination, and you can use that on your phone to prove that you have had the vaccination. Right, so we use digital technologies for doing that. Our payment infrastructure is the envy of the world. The UPI built on Aadhaar is the envy of the world. Nowhere in the world can you transfer money at almost zero cost, just knowing another person's telephone number. If you go to any part of India today, they will have a UPI code displayed, on the roadside selling, let's say, vegetables or things like that. They would have, a QR code displayed, and you can just pay them by using your mobile phone. So I'm actually very optimistic that several of our sectors will leapfrog and move into the 21st century, creating world-leading businesses and companies.
Yeah, thank you. A student asks, from Vivekananda Institute, on which way we differ from the developed nations IT sector, if at all we differ in any way.
So the key difference in India is affordable innovation, right? We don't have the luxury of, paying too high a cost for the products and services. So we have to rethink the model in which technology is made available. And the key difference is we talk about public platforms and private innovation on top of that. And so how we are going to develop our healthcare infrastructure, how we are going to develop our, for example, e-commerce and retail infrastructure built on ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. And on the healthcare side, we have National Digital Health Mission. And government is an active participant in promoting this. Just like in UPI, government also work to build that infrastructure. So this is a very, very interesting model for the world because it creates affordable innovation. It creates a level playing field, an open platform for startups to innovate on top of. I think that model of building technology infrastructure is really unique. And thanks to our telecom infrastructure, again, it's a model for the world, because nowhere else in the world can you get unlimited calls, unlimited messages, 1 GB of data, all for 300 rupees per month, which is approximately $4 per month. nowhere else in the world. And the quality is very good. Wherever you go, you get a 3G, or most places we get a 4G signal now. And we are also rolling out 5G.
Yeah, absolutely. Also a related question to students. The Center for University and Industry Collaboration, Bharatiya University asks, what is your advice to freshers from university when they choose software as their career?
So the software is a very broad term. What you need to look at is trends, what I call riding the wave. Look for emerging technologies, emerging trends that you believe will impact an industry, will impact a society, and look for companies that are creating these technologies, that are using these technologies to build new models, and join those companies. Make that your specialization. Create depth of knowledge in those areas. So riding the wave is what I would advise students.
Thank you. Thanks, Kris. We've almost reached the end of our time, but with your permission, there is one general question.
Sure.
And Dr. Poonam Gupta would like to know your views on the current situation of Indian economy.
You would have already realized that I'm a very optimistic person. I'm optimistic about India. I believe that with the talent that we have, with the access to technology that we have, the creativity and the innovation that we can unleash, and the ambition that Indian youth has. My generation was tentative. We were not sure that we would succeed. But today's youth have no fear. They have no inhibitions. And I work with large number of startups. They believe that they can beat anybody in the world in business. So I am very confident that India will accelerate its growth. India will become leaders in several industries. And, the unicorns that, many founders have created are examples. See, we will have ups and downs. We will have economic cycles, but secular growth for the Indian economy is upwards. Secular growth for many industries is upwards. And that is what gives me the, let's say, optimism and the ability to say that we will become a $10 trillion economy sooner. We'll become a developed economy sooner than later. And in the next 30 years, the last 30 years were very exciting. Lots of changes have happened, but next 30 years are going to be even more exciting and exciting for India.
Thank you. Thanks, Kris. With that very optimistic tone, let me express my gratitude to you for doing this session with us. AIMA is deeply grateful to you for doing this, and I really enjoyed moderating the session with you. It was a lot of education for me personally, so thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Shrinivas, and thank you, AIMA. For...
Also, just to share some numbers with you, Kris, we had more than 550 on various mediums such as LinkedIn, Facebook. So plus we had about 240 in Zoom. We had 80 students in a class. So close to 900 were listening to you today. So just to update you on the viewership of this program. And I think it was very, very interesting. So thank you. And as I said, we really hope that you can make it for one of our physical events in Delhi. And I'll ask Rekha to be in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thank
and over
you,
to you, Rekha.
Thank you so much, Kris. I think you can see by the comments and the questions how much everybody enjoyed the session today. Thank you so much for doing this for us. And on behalf of everybody, I hope we have the pleasure of having you again with us on a physical platform, as Srini says. And I would also like to thank all our delegates who are logged on onto Zoom and all our social media platforms. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all your support to the Leaders Speak series. Thank you, Srini. Thank you so much for moderating this session so well. I'll keep pulling you in for other events as we go forward.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Good evening, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.